You head south and see the makings of a large, insurmountable wall blocking off the entrance to a town in the distance. As you approach, you see the great stone wall that has now gone to seed. It is crumbling, a shadow of its former self. There is a gate blocking the path to the town, manned by 3 guards. One of them, an older man with an air of authority to go along with an ample midsection and beefy fists that look like boulders, turns and smiles at your party. You have a fair look to you. I knew it when I saw you coming up the path that you would help us. The name's Darren Arrington, but Dak will do me just fine. Let me give you some tips for navigating Saltmarsh. It can be unforgiving, yes, but it is my home, and I'd want for you to see the best of it. Those were the first words I uttered as a GM to a group of friends that I had been gaming with since 2013. I remember how nervous I was. My hands were shaking. I was jittery. But when I wrote those first lines, it's the last one I was thinking about the most. I want you to see the best of it. I've been GMing now for a little over 5 years, and I consider myself a pretty novice game master. Being a GM can be intimidating, but I have found that if I think about that one line, I want you to see the best of it, it helps guide me along the right path for a better game, for my players and myself. It took me 20 years of playing D&D before I took the plunge to become a GM. Some of you know me, and I love storytelling, puzzles, dialogue, creating challenges. You would think it would be a natural fit. So why did I wait so long to get behind the screen? Well, I was intimidated. I was worried my friends would not have fun, wouldn't see what I thought was cool as interesting for them, that my vision for a game and what they wanted from games would not coalesce. When I joined Dungeons and Toast, we thought of the concept of gamifying pathways. And it was not long before somebody, probably Greg or Lonnie, said, what if we created a path for people who are interested in becoming a GM? And over the last few years, the concept has been turned over and over and talked about so much that we've seen individuals giving speeches about GM mechanics and experiences. This year, I'm excited to share with the group that we'll be formalizing a GM path for Dungeons and Toast. And tonight, I'd like to show it to you and also give a small snippet of what's to come beyond just the GM path. Now, everybody, please let me know when you can see my screen. I guess not let me know, but hopefully you'll just see it. Can I get some thumbs up if it's up yet?
Yep.
Yes.
It is up.
Great, great. Thank you. Well, all right. The path of the GM, primer and Q&A. Let's get started. So why create this path? There are a handful of reasons. The first was for individuals like me. Many years ago, the aspiring GM who is maybe too stressed, too nervous, and doesn't know where to begin and feels overwhelmed of how to begin gaming or begin game mastering. The second is to help those who have been active and may have hit a wall, a GM block, if you will. And I think of this as times when I've been running games and I lose creativity or my games feel repetitive. What can I do to help myself be more creative with the way that I run games? The third is to create a new twist on the Pathways program in Toastmasters. I am now almost done with a second path, and I'm probably going to start a third. And I hate to say it, but they can be pretty repetitive, especially those early projects. How many times do you want to give an icebreaker? How many times do you want to talk about vocal variety? How many times do you want to research and present? I thought that this would be a fun way for you to take those speeches and put them into a format that's different, that will be add a little flair. And finally, to enhance the membership experience for Dungeons and Toast. I love our club. I think it's a lot of fun, but why not use our environment and use our passions to bring the educational program to where we want it to be? And so that was the inspiration for this path. Now, how will this integrate with pathways? There are two paths that I'm building this on, and I would like to hat tip to Angel for letting me know that team collaboration will be sunsetting. If you have already purchased team collaboration to start this, when I mentioned this at the end of the year meeting, that's fine. It'll be set up to use that path, but moving forward, visionary communication will still be available. And you can purchase this path and it will work with the GM path. If you've already gone through visionary communication, I've learned from Angel, thank you again, that you can purchase it again and run through it again. Otherwise, if you're on another path or you need to get through another path, we can always communicate it or communicate about it and figure it out. But these are the two that I'm building around. And so what am I building? What does the path look like? Here's kind of a quick overview, and please, there will be questions at the end. Hold them until then. The first is level 1, mastering the fundamentals. And the idea behind this is you're going to start thinking about why. Why do you want to do this? What does it look like? How are you going to build out what your games are going to look like? And what you as a GM look like? What is it that you want to play as the game master? And I've listed the GM project with the pathway project that it will align to. And there are 4 speeches in level 1. In addition, I'm putting the optional opportunity to begin blogging about your experiences and blogging about the speeches that you're doing and projects that you're taking on, so that when you get to your level 4 and 5 projects, you'll have that as a resource. And as more people do this, we can have a collection of posts that can be resources for anybody else who wants to pick up GMing. And the idea is that this is going to build you up until you get to your session 0. And you'll be prepared for your session 0 and to run your first campaign or first game. Level 2, we'll be talking about figuring out your style and what you like, what you dislike. And you can see there it matches up to the communication styles or active listening, the understanding your leadership style, as well as mentoring. And the idea here is that you take your assessment on leadership and think about how that can be applied to who you are as a GM, how you are going to build out your game so that it reflects what your personality or what your style may be. And then going from there, actually running your session 0 and getting some feedback and bringing that back to the group to review. And finally, sitting in on another game with another GM from the perspective of a game master and taking notes about what you like about what they do, what you maybe want to do differently, and getting feedback from them about how they put together their preparation. With level 3, I think this is really the most fun level because this is where you've run your first game. And with this, you have your 1 speech that's required for level 3, and this is where the electives come in. And I like to think of this as you get to decide what style GM and how that applies to what you're doing in the game. So level 2, you get your style. Level 3 is where you say, these are the elements of my style. And so whether it's you want to be a big storyteller, and so using your first game and learning how to weave a story out of the experience, or you want to be heavy on the technology, figuring out ways through Midjourney and giving us a little session or course on how you utilize that to create images, or using presentation software or Roll20 to create a tabletop gaming experience for your players. Introducing loot. Do you want to be a game master that is really big on providing loot for your players to have fun and find, and that's your reward, that's the stick that you're giving them? Understanding the players that you have and pairing them up with loot that you think will fit them and how that balances your game. And then finally, if you're somebody who's into role play, building NPCs and sharing with us how you are inspired by fictional characters or members of the media and showing us what that's going to look like as a GM for you. From there, level 4, you can start building on that. And one of the things that I love about a recent game I played with a friend is that the stakes don't just have to be death. Death is not the only price of failure, but how do you incorporate fun failure into games? I was recently playing in a game and I flew too close to the sun, is what I'll say. And it was a heist, and I wanted to steal everything. And I had gotten 3 out of the 5 things to steal, and I was going for my 4th. All we needed to do was take one to be successful. And I failed, and I got captured by a competing group that was stealing other stuff. And in our next game, that is going to have consequences, obviously. So how do you start building in decisions, start building in choices that will motivate your players to buy in and really have emotional investment in your game? Additionally, this is where you kind of think bigger. How do you manage the different personalities of your players? How do you coordinate your game successfully? Because the hardest thing in the world is getting adults to come together with their schedules and actually set aside 4 to 5 hours. Exponentially harder when they start having offspring. Don't even get me started. And finally, if you'd like to utilize what you've been doing from the beginning, if you were writing the blog, this might be a good chance for you to reflect on your evolution as a GM and look at how building up your blog has helped yourself and potentially connected you with other GMs in the group. And then finally, demonstrating your expertise, level 5, finish your campaign, whatever chapter you've been running in your campaign. The previous levels, you should be incorporating these elements into games you're running. And now this might be when you wrap up that dungeon and you share the experience with the group. Next, run either a panel with other GMs and build out the agenda so that people can get best practices based off of what you have recently learned you wish you would have known. Or you can try run a one-shot, which is a completely different way to manage a game because you may be working with players you never played with before, and you don't have the luxury of being able to tell a story over time. And then finally, as is required with every path, what I learned as a GM, reflecting on that path that you just took. And so that's the rough outline of the path of the GM. And what did we consider? Well, one, it's still evolving. I mentioned earlier that it's based off of these 2 paths, but if you're in another pathway, I'd like this to work for anybody who's in the educational system. Second, how is it going to tie into our campaign? You'll still earn the credit the way you would to build XP for your characters. Additionally, if you join the GM path, you'll be given consumables that will increase in rarity for your character to use as you continue through the levels of the path of the GM. How will this function in meetings? You'll sign up for a speaker slot, and please just let folks know which GM project you're going to be doing. We will have them on the website. I'm assuming Lonnie will do that, if I'm being honest, but we will have them on the website. Otherwise, you can connect with me and I'll let you know. And I will be posting a lot of this stuff on the blog. How does this function on Basecamp? It doesn't. You're going to use your original path. And as you saw, you'll just mark the paths that you completed or projects that you completed based off of how they line up with the GM path. How do I get started? You can sign up now if you already know it. Obviously, I'd like to say that we have already gotten started. Thank you very much to Kate for doing her icebreaker speech and being the first volunteer to do the GM path. And then finally, what's coming up is I'm also building out a mini path for those of you who are not ready to be a GM or not even necessarily ready to role play. There's going to be a 2-level mini path that will help you get started with tabletop RPGs.